Hey guys, welcome back to the church lighting game plan. We're here in lesson 3, and I'm really excited to bring this lesson to you. I'm excited to bring all the lessons to you. I've probably said that for every lesson, but I'm really excited to bring this lesson to you because I know in the area of programming and playback, there's a lot of confusion. And to be honest, it's an area where when I first started with lighting, I was confused. When I first started, I was doing lighting at my church as a youth group, and just to set the stage, I know I've told little bits of this before, but never the whole story. What had happened was we had built a new building. Our church had built a new building. It was a pretty large church, but we had really grown in the past few years. So our old building, the sanctuary had some minimal lighting. I'm not sure if we even used lighting on Sunday morning. We might have. It may have just only been in white, but there was a lot of natural light in the room. And so it might have been just something that they turned on. I can't honestly remember. And none of the other rooms had any lighting. And so when we moved into our brand new, big facility, room for growth, an auditorium that had, I think 1,500 seats in the main auditorium, pretty big church. And all of a sudden, we've got a main auditorium that's got no windows. It's the typical design that you see a lot, that kind of thing. And so there wasn't natural light, and so there were a whole bunch of conventional lights, source 4 pars, cyc lights, stuff like that. And we had some ability to do color. And then in the youth room, we had a rig in there too with, probably 40 conventional lights, I'd say. And so this was really when I had the first opportunity to begin working with lighting. And the funny thing was, everybody was new to lighting with the church tech people. So at the time, they hired a guy to run the stuff, to run all the church tech shortly after moving into the new building because they had so much more tech overall. And he was an audio guy, good guy. We're still friends to this day. But nobody knew a lot about lighting. The guy who was the consultant didn't know a ton about lighting. He knew enough to get the right rig installed. But when it came to the day-to-day operations, not a lot of, there wasn't really anybody who knew about the lighting. And as I started playing with the lighting and learning it and reading the manual to the ETC Express console that we had and just trying to figure out, programming tons of cues and pressing like Q5 enter, Q10 enter, Q20 enter, Q20.5 enter. I'd be pressing all those buttons and all that, and it was quite a bit of time until I found out about submasters on this console, and I was like, oh, I can program stuff on these and have a cue on each one of these and bring them up at will. And my mind was blown, and I began to eventually, as I interned there, I was doing all the lighting for the church, which was a ton of fun and a huge growth opportunity for me. And as I think back to those times, I just think about how I was so confused as to how in the world to handle all this, to get the lights that I wanted programmed so that they could be brought up at the right times during the service, but, still have flexibility and, be able to change things if I want to change things on the fly, etc. And so in this lesson, I want to talk about just that. So when you're programming and playing back in your console, you've got a few options as to how you can do it. And the first is you can program out the whole service. And so going back to the example I was talking about, me as a teenager at my church, in the main sanctuary, what they did was they just had 10 cues, say, and the lighting volunteers would press cue number and then go for whatever cue they wanted, and they basically just had, some simple different scenes that they changed around from time to time to change colors and stuff. But for example, there was like a scene for sermon, a scene for walk in and walk out, etc. And we'll get more into this in the coming videos, but I just want to introduce this. Then we had program each song, and so that you can, instead of programming the whole service, have a whole bunch of cues and say, okay, this is the cue for how great is our God, and this is the cue, or these are the cues for, how great thou art. That was the same song. No, it's not, but similar song. For a different song, and for this other song, for Oceans, we have these cues over here, and then every week the volunteer can go through and say, okay, these are the songs we're doing, here's the cues I need to play. Another option is to program color schemes. And so then each week, the volunteer or you or a staff member would play back, would say, okay, we're playing these 5 songs and here's what the slides are doing. And so we're going to match them color scheme wise, or we're going to talk to them and say, this song I really feel fits, a magenta blue look. Can we match that? And they'll say, yeah, we can match that. Oh, that looks good. And so you can program each color scheme, or you could punt. And what is punting? Well, we'll get into that in the next videos below this. We're going to dissect all of these individually so that you can get a really good idea of how to program each system, basically, whether you're programming your whole service, whether you're programming each song, whether you're programming the color schemes, or you're punting, which is basically a terminology we use in the lighting industry to say you run everything live. You've got some building blocks pre-recorded, but you don't have any full looks per se that you're just pressing through between songs. And so these are basically the main 4 different ways that you're able to program it. And in the next videos, right below, we're going to have 4 videos where we're going to talk about what the pros and cons are for each of these options. And then we're going to talk about how to do it on the different types of consoles that I've recommended, that being the Entech DMXs, the Chauvet Show Express, and the Martin M-Touch. And if you use some other console, that's okay as well, because these consoles really are so different, but there's a lot of consoles out there that are like the M-Touch, there's a lot that are like Show Express, and there's a lot that are like DMXs. So fear not, watch the videos below, and we'll talk about how to program your lights to the service and play it back without any lighting disasters. I'll see you guys over there.